Hey there, Yarn Life. I am so excited for our episode today. I'm taking the reins. It's my turn. Selena had last week. Now it's time for Jess to rock it out as host. So thank you for joining us here on Yarn Life for your daily dose of fiber. That is our fancy little catchphrase that we like to throw out there. Be sure to get tangled up in our fun, upbeat, educational Facebook group. You can join us there anytime, facebook.com/groups/yarnlife. And that group is dedicated to the hanks, skeins, balls, and cake. I'm partial to cake that we love the most, and to the people who make the most of them. Because yarn is life. Dun, dun, dun.
Yarn is life.
True story. Today we are featuring my awesome friend Selena Baca, the founder, host, and lead educator at the American Crochet Association. The ACA is a first of its kind educational platform for all levels of crocheters to build skills and get certified. Hi, Selena.
Hi, Jess. Always good to see you. I love chatting with you. You're my favorite.
Yay. Oh, you're my favorite. We always have so much fun together, and I'm really excited to dive into our topic today, mastering crochet, and talking about the ACA and everything that you do there, because it is a sorely needed platform for our community, and I'm really glad that you're the intrepid pioneer who went out there and built it for us. So let's just start with, what is the ACA exactly? Can you give us a rundown of why it exists, what the purpose is, and what you're trying to do over there?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. The ACA has been around for a little over a year and a half, and it's changed a few times. It's evolved. In essence, what it is today is it's online education. It is crochet education geared towards people who just want to build their skills. Maybe they don't want specific pattern help. You know, maybe they don't want to just learn how to make blankets or dolls or sweaters or things like that. They really genuinely want an honest, ground up approach to crochet education. And I've been very obsessed with crochet since I was very little. And I love to understand things in their entirety. I love to know how and why and where and what are the different options. And so that's what I bring to the table. That's why I created the American Crochet Association. I've been in the professional crochet world for a while. I've written patterns, I've sold things, I've worked for magazines, written articles, things of that nature. And what I found was every time I would go to do something, write an article or make a pattern or something like that, I was always looking for a specific resource to help people, whether it be finishing techniques or how to do color blocking or different kinds of crochet stitches. What are the differences? There were questions I had, but then there were also resources that I specifically needed to do my job that I just couldn't find. So that's where the American Crochet Association was born. It was that I started collecting resources. I started collecting information, and then I quickly saw this is its own thing. This isn't a supplement to the patterns I write. This isn't a supplement to the articles that I do or the magazines that I work for. This is very clearly becoming its own thing. Education is where my heart is. It's where my passion is. So that's the long of our story. What it is today is I've been doing this for so long. I've taught in person. I've taught at conventions for so long that I feel that if you just came into my living room and you wanted to either learn to crochet or you just wanted a better understanding for crochet, if you were sitting in my living room, this is how I would teach you. I would give you this 12-course program, which is essentially what we have. And every one of those courses is distilled down into lessons that are going to help you, for example, better understand yarn, different kinds of yarn, different fibers, different weights, different types, what all of those mean, how to substitute. So it literally is this skill building, this knowledge building platform on the cellular level up.
I think that's awesome. And I think it's so interesting that you cover such a wide range of topics, in the learning path. And I think we're going to talk about that in a minute. But what I find really interesting is that you know, most crocheters start, either a friend or family member teaches them, maybe they take a class.
Yes.
But usually what they start with is a stitch. You know, they start with, hey, let's actually learn how to make a chain. Let's learn how to, you know, make a single crochet. And those things are important, yes, but there's so much more to being a well-rounded crocheter. And, you know, knowing, you know, yarn substitution, that's something that's really difficult to find resources on that are easily consumable and help you understand the topic better. So I think it's really cool that you're diving not only into like what most people would think of when they think of wanting to learn or master crochet, but
Right.
all of the other little things that most of us have to stumble upon, you know, when we first learn, or, you know, we'll make a mistake and then we learn because, you know, we made the mistake first. But if someone had shown that to us, or if we had been taught, you know, more aspects of the craft, you know, we might not have made that mistake. So I think that's really cool that you're kind of covering it from all angles, which is, you can't find anywhere else.
Absolutely. And that's what I found. And I just have such a passion for this. You know, I really would love to have people in my living room, literally, and just crocheting with them and me learning from them and them learning from me and what I've gathered over the years. And I think that this is important on a level that it's a social skill as well as just a hobby. And what I love about this is that what I really hope to be doing is to teach this generation how to ask better questions, how to approach crochet differently, so that we can continue to pass it down through the generations. I would love that. I would love to create people who aren't just like, well, I learned to crochet and I don't really know what I'm doing, but I made this. And there's nothing wrong with that, but because that's what I did for years and years and years and years. I don't know what this is, but this is what I'm doing. And, you know, sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And it's just, it feels so good to have more control over how you learn and what you learn, and just having better quality questions to ask.
Yeah, I think that's important. Because again, like you said, there's nothing wrong with, I mean, I know people that they wanted to learn how to crochet, but they really just wanted to see what it was all about, because I'm always talking about it. So I taught them like a single or a double crochet or whatever. And they're like, look, I made a washcloth. And they'll be like months later, they'll come back, I made another washcloth. And they're just like totally content to like make washcloths. And that's cool too. But you know, if you really love the craft and if you're passionate about it, and obviously, Selena, you're passionate about it. And I tell you that all the time, that it comes across in every live video that you do. But, you know, if you're really passionate about learning more and you want to kind of explore other areas of what the craft has to offer, I think it's important to kind of get your feet wet in as many areas as you can.
Absolutely. It's very ground up. I love things from the ground up. I love just having a continuous cycle of going over basics and building from there.
Yeah, I think that's important. You have to have that good foundation. So let's talk about the learning path, because we kind of touched on it and you hinted at it a little bit, but what is it exactly, and why is it important to what you do at the ACA?
Absolutely. Now, I did talk a little bit about how the ACA has evolved over the year and a half that we first launched. And when I first started the American Crochet Association, it was very much like Netflix, to where you just kind of log on as a member, and it's the world at your fingertips. You can just you can skip around and watch or do or learn whatever you want. And I quickly realized that there's no path to that. There's no, it's too in your face. It's too much. And so what I decided to do was to take all that information and package it into courses. Because when you distill down crochet, in my eyes, basically in 12 different courses, 12 different topics, you can essentially master crochet. So that's what I did. And I wanted to take that one step further. I didn't want people to just kind of log in and feel overwhelmed. I want you to genuinely learn these different topics. So for example, right now, our course that we're all doing together, All of our membership platform right now is all going over the same course together. So we're all seeing one course, and we're all going over the lessons for that course together. And we're learning how to source crochet patterns, where you source crochet patterns and inspiration, and not only where you find them, but then what are you going to do to store that in a way that makes sense for you to organize it and go back and very quickly find it and extract it and utilize it and document your whips and your finished projects. And Jess, you and I talk so much about creating processes to make your life easier.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing in crochet. So that's what I mean by going back to, what is it that we do and why is this important? This is one of those questions that you may not say you need. I know where to find crochet patterns, and I just save them on my email or my computer or whatever. It doesn't matter. Like I'm whatever I'm doing is working just fine. But then when you take a step back and you say, this isn't really the best filing system. Let's create a better filing system so that when you want to go make something because you have a yarn or you have a pattern, that you've got very fine-tuned ways to go and find it. So that is essentially our learning path. Our learning path is distilling down. There's 12 different things in crochet. There's 12 different topics in crochet to master: sizing, yarn, sourcing and management, things of that nature. We all go through them together. All the courses are introduced to us. And then as a community, we have conversations about them. As a community, we do different kind of homework. We have action steps that apply each of these things that we learn together. And that way, if there's any questions, if anybody's lost, we're all doing it together. So you can very quickly look to your right or left in the virtual world and say, I'm stuck, or how do I apply this, or what does this mean? And you've got a whole community, this whole membership who's doing the exact same thing that you are, and you're learning together. So that is the learning path, and it's important. It's as if you are sitting in a classroom and you're going through a college course with other people who want to be there, other people who are listening, other people who are maybe taking different aspects of the lesson and sharing them in ways that maybe you didn't think of. So it is a learning environment, and that's what makes this learning path so different and interesting.
I love that, because I say this about YPS. I said it's like school, but fun. And I think that's what the ACA is. I think we all have a natural curiosity and a natural love to learn, especially crafters who like to make and tinker and build, and that kind of, those are kind of in our DNA. And I think, capitalizing on that with the learning path and allowing people to kind of funnel that natural progression and energy into like, hey, we're all going to do this together, and we're going to incrementally build up so that, it happens so slowly that you don't even notice that you're learning. And I think this is one of the things that I wanted to touch on, because you talked about like in 20 minutes a week, and how you structure the lessons so that they're, I don't want to say bite-sized because it's not like 5 minutes, but right. a manageable size, so that people can feel like they're, yeah, there you go. So that people can feel like they're not falling behind, because I think that's one of the things that people worry about is, if there's so much information in there, and if I'm going to be learning so much, like how hard is it going to be for me to actually consume all of this and get value from it?
Absolutely. And again, I tested a lot of things for a year. It's one thing to give a lesson in person, and it's a completely other thing to create an online learning environment so that people have fun. It's very easily accessible, and it's easy to participate. So that really made a difference to me. That was something that as a member, I would have wanted to see. So you're absolutely right. I figured if people are going to actually get the most out of this information, I've got to distill down. It can't be an hour one week and 2 hours the next week and third. I really had to pinpoint, okay, I have to make this about 20 minutes a week. So a lesson it's a PDF that you can download and you kind of read through. And it's very big and it's colorful, so it's very easy to follow, whether you're a visual person. And it's also, I record each one, and it sounds like a conversation just like this. This is what I do. This is how I do it. This is what you can do. This is how to try it. So if you learn by listening, if you learn by reading, if you learn because you like big, bold pictures, if you learn by doing. I like to approach it from all of those different aspects. And that way, it's never boring for the member. It's never boring for them. And maybe they never listen to the videos. Maybe they never read the handout. But there's always some aspect that may speak to them.
Yeah, I think that's really important because I think we assume that as makers, we're all visual people, that we all want to watch videos. And I think a lot of us do like to watch videos, but there are some times that I just want to sit down with my iPad and read through, you know, some text, and I don't have to have my headphones in, and I don't have to, you know, bother anybody with sound. Like, I can just sit somewhere and consume it that way. And I think it's valuable to be able to give people that option. Because I think even those of us who like to listen to videos, you know, maybe you're not in a situation where you can do that right now, or you don't feel like doing that this week, whatever. Like, it gives people the opportunity to choose a different option, which is cool.
Absolutely.
So, I think what most excites me about the ACA is just, like we kind of talked about, covering everything and covering it in a way where you, like you said, where you distill it down to kind of like, this is the core, like this is what we're actually trying to get at here. And you might find some fluff other places, you know, around this, but like, this is what you really need. And can you go through a few of the other courses? I know we talked about, you know, there's a yarn mastery course and, you know, pattern management. And I think there were a few other, there was a gauge one, wasn't there? There was a whole course on
gauge and swatching. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that was one of the, and there's so many classes. This is what I love about the ACA, is there's so many classes that I give, like on gauge and swatching, for example, and everybody went, gauge and swatch? I don't gauge. Yeah. What is gauge? I don't swatch. Like, so many people look at the topic and they're like, that one, it's boring. 2, I don't do it. 3, like, I don't have time for this. Like, I like, so many people have very perceived notions of what they think that they need. Yeah. And so what I loved about that course is that, you know, they're like, fine, all right, I'll take the course. You know, I'm here, I'll take the course. And they take the course and they're like, holy cow, I had no idea that you swatch to, like, see what a yarn looks like because it's variegated. I had no idea you swatch to see if all these colors I chose go together based on this pattern that I'm making. I had no idea you should swatch because I'm working on a very complex pattern and I want to use this yarn. But when I actually see this yarn with this pattern, like, I was going to make a king size blanket or a sweater, and that would have been a terrible mistake. I had no idea I should swatch to see if the specific yarn that I'm using is actually going to fit the pattern that I'm making because I'm substituting it. So there's all these different reasons that you swatch, and not that nobody talks about that, but nobody talks about the different reasons that you swatch. You know, when we see a pattern, if we're making something sized or not, you see this little line, gauge, and it's like 3.5 stitches equals 4 inches, or 1 inch, or, you know, 2.75 rows equals 1 inch. And you're like, I came here to crochet. I didn't come here.
I don't want to do math.
So I didn't come here to math. What is this? But when you distill down, let's talk about what gauge is. Let's talk about how you extract a gauge. Let's talk about how you replicate gauge. And then let's talk about swatching. Like, that's what gauge is, but then swatching is something totally different. Swatching is before you make the thing, whatever the thing is, you're going to practice. Because you don't want to practice making the thing that you're doing, because if you're making a blanket, first few rows, I guarantee you, because it's me too. Like, man, I was using a new yarn. It's a new pattern. I was reading and I made it and it's cinched or it's too big. And then I've got the whole rest of all 98 other rows look beautiful. But those first 2 rows, it's like, man, that is a hot mess. So it's learning all of these different tips and tricks. That's like, oh, that's why swatching is so important. Like, that's where you do the hard work. So yeah, that was one class that everybody was like, man, this is not fun. But then you get there and you do the work and you take the lesson and you practice and you have all of this new information, like, oh, this is what gauge is. This is why it's important. This is what swatching is. This is why it's important. This is why I should do this. Then it's so revolutionary in the quality of your work and the types of projects that you tackle. Like, it's not just one aspect. It really opens so many doors for you.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I mean, I'm a self-professed not swatcher.
Shame on you. No.
Yeah, and
so many people are. 98% of people who play with yarn are. Yeah.
I feel like knitters are better swatchers.
Yes.
Although I know that they hate to do it as well, but I know that, for example, when I made my first pair of socks, I was like, well, you can't really skip the swatch. Like, you don't get to skip the swatch when you're making socks. Like, I want them to fit. If I'm going to spend all this time on them, you know, like, I want them to fit. So I buckled down and I made the swatch. And I actually just made a swatch for a new design that I'm doing. And I ripped it out a few times because I was trying different, you know, stitch patterns and different ideas with this yarn and this particular size hook. And, you know, I wanted to see what it would look like. And I'm not going to start the entire project because it's going to be a blanket. I'm not going to start the entire blanket and then realize that, no, because I had one stitch pattern picked out and then I decided that I didn't like it because I did a swatch. And, you know, I think it's important.
To swatch. Yep.
I mean, I know that we're like totally getting kind of off topic here, but I think swatching is awesome now that but because I've never done it for colors.
Yeah.
I've always just like, hey, let's hold the yarn together.
Well, so many people do that. They're like, this is beautiful and I love this yarn, so we're just going to merge them. And you have no idea. You're just throwing it in there. Yeah.
Right. And then depending on the stitch pattern or, you know, like the way if you're doing stripes or like blocks or like whatever that looks like, however the colors are interacting is not the same as if you just hold the skeins next to each other. And I think for the variegated yarn too, I think that's really cool because there's a lot of times I have a bunch of skeins of variegated yarn that I have no idea what they're going to look like. You know,
and it depends. Is it a long color repeat? Is it a short color repeat?
Right.
How many different colors are in it? Are you making, like, what kind of pattern are you making? Is it something lacy? Is it something dense? All of those things come into play. And that's why it's like, you've got to make a swatch, especially if you're making something large or important, because you could waste your time. You could waste your yarn. You could, you know, you could be halfway through a project and go, I hate this yarn with this. And I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah. Well, I've been there, and then you're like, oh, well, I have to finish it. It's either you're teetering on the fence. Oh, well, I have to finish it now. Finish your frog. Yeah. And I think it's interesting. A lot of people are really talking about the swatch and gauge. Jessica said she learned a lot in that lesson. Let's see. She also said, I hated the swatch, but I swear by it now.
Yeah. And you know what? I loved hearing that. That's when I knew I was onto something with the learning path and the courses at the American Crochet Association, because at first I thought, no, people are only going to want to join if it's learn how to read crochet charts, learn how to read pattern instructions, learn how to substitute yarn, like all the big things, finishing techniques, you know, the more glamorous or the more, you know, those are the things people say, you know, those are the things I want to learn. And so that's why when we did swatching and gauge, I swear everybody was like, man, you know, I don't want to be here for this. But at the same time, the same thing happened with gauge and swatching, it was like this epiphany, this aha moment. There were people who are like, I've been crocheting for 50 years. And you mentioned things that I would have never thought of. Same thing with crochet tools. My favorite one, I always ask, hey guys, this is the next course. Do you guys have any questions? And one was crochet hooks and tools. And I had so many people go, nope, I don't have any questions. Right. And then when I brought forth the lesson, we had one lesson just on crochet hooks, the anatomy of crochet hooks, different grip styles, different tip. You know, you hear all these different tip styles in your crochet hook. Did you know about all these different things? And did you think about that there are all these different anatomy parts of your crochet hook? And maybe you like boy for these reasons. Maybe you like that hook style for all these different reasons. Maybe you like the bait style for all these different reasons. Maybe you like clover for these reasons. And it's like, instead of just randomly getting crochet hooks, when you're putting more thought into, oh, okay, here's all these different attributes. Like, that's something nobody thinks about. You're not going to think about that as you're picking up a crochet hook. Or you may just be very loyal to a certain brand, but you may have no idea why.
Right. Well, I think we discussed this last week because, you know, I'm a boy and he likes baits.
I'm a baits.
And I think the reason I'm stuck with boy is because it's, you know, what I learned on. And I told you, I said, I'm afraid to try Susan Bates because I'm afraid I'm going to like it. And then I have like $200 worth of hooks that are completely useless.
Well, That's it. Yeah. Well, that's actually what happened to me. My very first hook was a boy, and it was a boy G, and I still have that hook. And that, in my opinion, and this is why the ACA is so important. This is why I am dedicating so much to crochet education. I had the same crochet hook for probably 15 years, thinking that was the, like, this is a crochet hook. There are no other sizes. This is it. Like, every yarn I would get, big, small, fat, thin, were used with that one G hook. And I remember, like, one of my friends, like, I'm crocheting with one of my friends one day, and here I'm thinking I'm this crochet expert because I've been crocheting for 15 years. And she's like, "You're going to use a G with that yarn?" And I was like, "A what? She's like, why don't you use like this? That's like too small or too big for what you're doing." And I was like, "It is?" Yes, Lena, here. You need a X, Y, and Z hook for that yarn. I was like, "I do?" And she's like, "Yeah, look at the yarn label." And she's showing me all these incentives. It was as if, like, all of that time I'd been crocheting was not for nothing, but I was like, I had no idea. And so that's, I love creating moments like that for people who, it doesn't matter how long you've been crocheting. So the ACA is not for people who started last week or been crocheting for 50 years. It's for everyone, because, you know, crochet is the fun part. Picking patterns is the fun part. Picking the yarns is the fun part. And there's so many things in between that we don't even think to ask. There's so many things we don't question. We just kind of make do because we can. And I love that I'm creating situations that just make people ask better quality questions.
Yeah, I love that, because I think both of us would agree for our respective platforms that we don't want people to stop thinking or questioning when they leave our little realm, you know. I think it's important to instill a love of learning and exploring, and you know, keeping our eyes open as we go forth into the great big crochet world, you know.
Great big world. Absolutely.
That's funny. Real quick, a question from Jessica before we kind of move on. She said, why is it when I use Susan Bates, my yarn catches pretty bad? I'm curious if she needs to hold it differently. Like, I wonder if you, again, never used one, but I wonder if, because if you're used to a boy and you try and switch to a Susan Bates, that you might want to revamp how you're holding it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it could be any number of things. And what I love about that question is there's a lot of factors that could go into that. Let's see. Was that with a Susan Bates, your yarn catches? Susan Bates has sharper edges, I'll just say, than what we're going to call like a rounded or a boy style. So if that's happening, maybe it's because of those sharper edges. Maybe it's the yarn you're using. Some yarns are not as structured. Some yarns are a little bit more loose and billowy, and it could be just the particular kind of yarn you're using. If you're noticing that things like that are happening no matter what yarn you're using, then Jess, you're absolutely right. Maybe it's the tension, maybe it's the way you're holding your yarn, or maybe your tension is too loose and it's allowing your hook to kind of catch on those bits of yarn just because your tension isn't tighter. So it could be just a huge variety of things. If you're noticing that it's hindering your crochet process and it's frustrating you, maybe try a different yarn, try a different hook. I wouldn't mess too much with how you're holding your work unless you find it's uncomfortable or you're stopping more than you're going. So if you're finding that, it's almost like saying, you know, change, if you write with your right hand, you know, just start writing with your left hand. Like, it's not that easy. It's not that easy. So, you know, there's so much muscle memory that goes into crocheting with your hands, that if what I always say to people is, don't change too much unless your hands really hurt and you're always stopping, or if there's some aspect of what you're doing that is just way too slow or way too cumbersome. So if that is something that you're really trying to distill down, like, this is happening all the time, it doesn't matter what hook I'm using, it doesn't matter what yarn I'm using, it doesn't, like, you know, you've really got to distill down where it's coming from. Is it how I'm holding it? Is it the kind of yarn that I'm using? Is it the kind of hook that I'm using? And then just be really cautious And that way you don't kind of ruin your muscle memory and kind of jack your hands up or your shoulders. So just do small tests. That's what I would say.
Bam. Take that mini lesson from Selena.
There you go.
Yeah, value bomb. All right.
Value bomb.
So let's kind of wrap this up with, how is the ACA different from everything else we can find on the web? So, you know, there's plenty of Facebook groups and, you know, Ravelry groups or YouTube channels, tutorial, things like that. What sets the ACA apart?
Absolutely. What I think that there's value everywhere. I think that it's about where that's coming from and whether or not you connect with that person and whether or not you feel welcomed in that community and that learning environment. And that's what I have to offer. So I'm offering myself, I'm offering my community, and I'm offering something very, very specific. This is a learning path. I will teach you exactly these things. And I want you to really fully build your skills. I want you to build your skills. I want you to ask better quality questions. And I love treating the ACA like, you know, come to my house, we're going to sit in my living room, we're going to learn this together. I love that. I love connecting with people like that. And so if you enjoy that too, and you enjoy learning from a person and being able to connect with a person and also being able to connect with the community, then that's what I'm trying to offer. You know, this really genuinely means something to me. This isn't just a product. This isn't just a thing. This is something that I jump out of bed every day to do, literally. And
literally.
I literally do. I jump out of bed. And it does. It means something to me. And it means something to me that people, and this is weird for an entity, especially a membership entity, to say, I think, but I don't want to ever be your crutch. I don't want anyone to feel like they have to rely on me. They have to rely on the ACA. I want people to graduate from this. I want people to graduate from the 12-course program. I want people to be able to maybe then contribute so that we can just create this cycle of teaching the next generation, teaching our communities. And I feel that that's what sets us apart. That's what makes the ACA different.
I love that. And I think it's so cool that, you know, one of the things you talk about a lot is wanting to make sure that crochet is, you know, kind of around for the next generation. And I think it's been really cool to watch not only you, but, you know, other people in the space kind of make that happen, you know, passing on the knowledge and sharing it with people that will teach it to their kids, who will teach it to their kids. And so that it never really goes away and it just evolves. And I think that's cool. I think it's also, you know, helping crocheters help themselves. You know, you say that and it's important because not only because it's important, but because you actually live by it.
Yes.
And like I was saying, you know, I think we all have a natural curiosity and a natural, you know, want to learn, especially something that we're already passionate about. And I think using the ACA as a jumping off point and really using it to get that foundation, you know, master these 12 courses, master this learning path, and, you know, take that out into the big, which we have christened the big wide crochet world, right. You know, and pass it on and, you know, share the ACA with some people that could use it and continue the cycle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what it's about, creating better quality crocheters so that they can ask better questions, so that they can really genuinely have an understanding for what crochet is, how to make it better, different tips, tricks, techniques. I don't ever want people in the crochet world to go, well, this is what I learned, and so this is what I do. I don't know what it's called. I don't know why. I don't know why it looks like I don't want to create. I don't want that to just kind of be the norm.
Right.
Or I only do what this person does in videos. I can only make patterns that person shares in videos. Or I want people to break out of the box.
Yeah, I think that's important because I have actually come across a few people who actually don't know how to read patterns and will only either read charts, which is fine, but not all patterns are offered in charts, or have to watch videos. And that's got to be so limiting for someone who loves a craft. You know, I think allowing people to learn how to educate themselves, to learn how to grow as a maker, will give them the tools that they need and the knowledge that they need to continue and to learn far beyond, you know, what you've taught them.
Absolutely. And just to kind of, you know, to take that and touch on a few things that we talked about before. I mean, for example, it is very limiting to see a pattern and go, oh, it's made with this yarn, but I live in Australia or England, or I live in Oklahoma and I don't have that yarn, so I can't make that pattern. I mean, it's limiting on so many levels to not have a better quality, to not have a better quality education, to be able to look at something, for example, and say, okay, it's a chart, it's a video, it's written instructions, I can do all of that.
Right.
And maybe I enjoy video more. Maybe it's not being limited by any one particular thing, because that's where your knowledge ends. It's just knowing that there's more options and maybe you can tackle all of them. You know, maybe you can tackle that pattern because now you know how to substitute yarn and what it means.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think it's also important to teach people that they have the ability to learn. Because I sometimes feel that people are either afraid to learn or they hold themselves back. And that's kind of sad to watch. So I think, you know, teaching people that they can look, for example, if they didn't know anything about yarn substitution, you know, they can look for a solution, they can look for help, instead of just saying, oh, I can't make that because I can't, you know, I don't get the pattern here. It's a mindset shift.
Yes.
It's teaching people to be okay with, you know, not knowing something and finding the answer.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
I love how we just turned this into a whole deep conversation about education.
It always is, though. I mean, I'm really, and that's why the ACA is here, is because I care deeply about education and I care deeply about crochet. And so that's why this, I mean, if you don't know anything about me, I mean, I've been in this professional world since 2009, and I've tried a lot of different hats in the crochet world, and this really kind of is my passion project. This is everything that I care about into one. I really love that.
Yeah, I think that's great. Amanda typed in goals.
I love you, Amanda. I'm so glad you're here. I keep reading her commentary. I love it.
Totally. For a second, I saw that and I was like, goats? What do goats have to do with anything? I like goats. Goats are cool. So yeah, she said goals, not goats. But,
right.
You know, either or, it works. So I think that was all the questions we had. And I really think we had an awesome conversation. Thank you so much, Selena, for diving deep with us into the ACA and kind of explaining and sharing what you're doing over there.
My pleasure. It's always great to chat with you. Every time I chat with Jess, if we're not recording it, I'm like, oh my gosh, Jess, we should be recording this. First of all, Jess, we should be recording this. You know, thanks to everybody who is even interested about the ACA. Thanks to ACA members who are here chatting with us live. It's heartwarming to see our members here and you know, talking about their experiences. I just shout out to Amanda, for example, who says, you know, yeah, I was skeptical of the tools course. She says, LOL, wasn't sure what she was going to do with that, but I learned a lot. And that's what it's about. It's about taking something that you may not have necessarily thought any questions about, but just kind of redefining, oh, these are the kind of questions I should be asking.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. So thank you for being here. Thank everybody who's watching. If you're watching in the future, hello to the future.
Hello, future.
Hope you guys are enjoying us. Just a quick note about what's coming up next week. We're going to be putting a poll up in the Facebook group so you guys can send in some votes because we want to get you guys involved. So if you're not a member of the Facebook group already, make sure you join facebook.com/groups/yarnlife, and you can say hi to us and participate in that poll. And I think we'll wrap it up for this week. We're not doing a Granny Square challenge this week because Selena and I have both set our times. We have done it correctly.
This time, we think.
Yeah, we redid it last week. So we've got our times. I hope everybody had a great time, and I think we'll wrap it up.
That's right. Sounds good to me.
Awesome. Bye, guys. Thanks for watching.
Bye, guys. Thank you, Jess. Thanks, everyone.